How are you guys doing? Today is Sunday, November 7th, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile on David De Gea. The elite Spanish goalkeeper for Manchester United turns 31 today, and my intention with this episode is, of course, to shine light on the accomplishments, the achievements, and the amazing feats that David De Gea has been able to accomplish from the moment that he stepped foot on the senior circuit for Atletico Madrid as a teenager to where he is now as one of the 5, 6, 7 goalies with one of the best jobs in the world right now. So if you're unfamiliar with David De Gea, I guess his goalkeeping style is attributed to his lightning quick reflexes. He's very fast. I mean, Manchester United's defense over the past years hasn't really been that helpful for David De Gea, but the thing for David De Gea is that when his defense is moving, that David De Gea will not be the reason that his team loses. So, of course, going back into the background, he's originally from Madrid. He was tipped to be the successor to Iker Casillas when he was a teenager as he was coming up. He came up through the Atletico Madrid youth system. And he would eventually come up and be promoted, playing his very first games for Atletico Madrid in his age 18 season in 2009-2010. In his age 18 season, he started all 19 of the games that he played in a season where Atletico Madrid would finish with the 9th best record in La Liga. They finished up as the runners-up to the Copa del Rey. However, in 2009-2010, they did go on to win the Europa League that year. So, of course, they were able to pick up that trophy. And following the 2009-2010 season, he was also able to pick up the UEFA Super Cup winner they were also able to pick up the UEFA Super Cup in 2011 as they were able to beat Inter Milan after Inter Milan won Champions League the prior season. So that was really David De Gea's first intro, at least to the club for that matter. Following his first season in Atletico Madrid, he would play his only full season at Atletico Madrid in his age 19-20 season in 2010-2011. He would go on to start all 38 of the matchups he played in a season where Atletico Madrid finished with the 7th best record in La Liga, finishing with 11 more points than the previous season. That trophy, they coming off of the Super Cup win, that was the only trophy that they won for that calendar season. That would be the second season in which Sergio Aguero would lead the team in scoring. They finished in the quarterfinals of the Copa del Rey, and they would lose in the group stage of Europa League. But looking at how David De Gea fared in those matchups, in La Liga, in the 38 matchups he played and he conceded about 52 goals, which is still pretty impressive considering he was a teenager starting in La Liga. He would have 11 clean sheets, the first time he had a double-digit amount of clean sheets. And then in the 5 Europa League games he played, he would concede about 7 goals in those matchups. Taking a look at how he fared for Manchester United following the 2010-2011 season. He would eventually get signed for Manchester United, and Manchester United has been the team that he has been with ever since. He would eventually go on to start all 29 of the matchups he played in his very first season with Manchester United in the Premier League. That season, Manchester United would go on to finish with the second best record in all of the Premier League, following a season in which they won the Champions League. They would go on to win the FA Community Shield that year, as that was the only trophy they won this year. They would get knocked out of group stage and then get knocked out of the round of 16 in Europa League. But in David De Gea's first Premier League season, he would only allow 26 goals in the 29 games he played, the first season in which he allowed less goals than matches played, and his 13 clean sheets were the most that he had in a domestic cup season. However, his Champions League and Europa League luck weren't as good. He allowed 7 goals in 4 Champions League games and 6 goals in 4 Europa League games. Following that season, he would go on to compete with Spain in the Olympics. And then, of course, those 3 matches he played. Spain would go on to finish in the very bottom of their group and not even make it through group stage. They lost their first matchup to Japan 1-0. They lost their second matchup 1-0 to Honduras, and then they drew 0-0 to Morocco as Spain was unable to score at all. But following that 2012 Olympic bid, he would come back to Manchester United for his second full season there. And in his second full season at Manchester United, in his age 21 season where he turned 22, in the Premier League, David De Gea would start all 28 of the matchups that he would play in a season where Manchester United would win the Premier League. This is the fifth. This would go on to be the 5th Premier League title that Manchester United would win in a 7-year span. In the 2 years in which they did it, in 2010 and 2012, they were the runners-up. So, of course, a great run for Man U. And even the year before they won their first one, that they were runners-up. So that's 8 years in a row in which Manchester United finished as one of the top 2 teams in the Premier League. This would be the only Premier League title that David De Gea has won. This is also the last Premier League title that Manchester United has won to date. In that 2012-2013 season, he would go on to allow 24 goals in the 28 matchups that he played. He finished with 11 clean sheets, the 3rd consecutive season where he had double-digit clean sheets in his domestic season. Looking out to what they did outside of that, they lost in the 6th round of the FA Cup. They lost in the 4th round of the League Cup. They would end up getting knocked out in the round of 16 in Champions League, as they would eventually find themselves losing to Real Madrid that season. But following that 2012-2013 season, David De Gea would return for his 3rd season with Manchester United, and in his age 22 season, he would start all 37 of the matchups that he played in a season where Manchester United would go on to finish with the 7th best record in the Premier League. However, they did go on to win the FA Community Shield, so this would be the 3rd consecutive year in which David De Gea was able to pick up a trophy for Manchester United. And looking at how he fared in the Champions League, or in the Premier League itself, he conceded 40 goals in the 37 matches he played. He finished with 12 clean sheets. This is the 4th consecutive domestic season in which he finished with a double-digit amount of clean sheets. Outside of the Premier League and out of the British tournaments, they would go on to lose in the quarterfinal of the Champions League this season, as they ended up falling short 4-2 on aggregate to Bayern Munich. And looking out to how David De Gea fared in the Champions League that season, he would only allow 9 goals in the 10 matches he played. His 5 Champions League clean sheets at the time were the most that he had been able to post up in his career, a new career high. And following that 2014 outing for Manchester United, despite the fact that they didn't even qualify for Europa League that year, David De Gea would be named to the Spanish national team for the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. However, he would not play. He would not play for Spain until the next season. However, in 2014, he would get officially named up to the Spanish national team, which was a very tough thing to do. Following his age 22 season, and I guess going into how Spain fared at the World Cup that year, they would get knocked out in group stage after their 2010 bout saw them finishing with the title. But following that 2014 World Cup, David De Gea will go into his age 23 season, his 4th full season with Manchester United. He will go on to start 37 of the 38 matchups in a season where Manchester United would finish 4th in the table and qualify for Champions League the following season. This would be the very first season at Manchester United in which he had not qualified for a trophy that season. They lost in the round of 6 in the FA Cup, and they lost in the second round of the League Cup. in the Premier League tie-up matches he played. He allowed 35 goals in the 37 matches he played with 10 clean sheets. This would be the 5th consecutive domestic season in which he had finished with at least 10 or at least a double-digit amount of clean sheets in the season itself. Following the 2014-15 season, he would go on to help Manchester United qualify for Champions League the next year. In his 6th season, or I guess in his 5th season at Manchester United, in his age 24 season in 2015-16, he would start 34 of the 38 matchups in a season where Manchester United finished with the 5th best record in the Premier League. They would, however, go on to win the FA Cup for the only time that David De Gea has won it in his career. So, of course, that would go down as a very big trophy for him. 2015-16, starting off in the Premier League in a season in which they would qualify for the... I guess in a season in which they would go on to qualify for Europa League. David De Gea would allow 30 goals in the 34 matchups he played, as his 15 clean sheets are the most that he would put up in a Premier League season, at least up to that date. In the Europa League, he would go on to allow 3 goals in the 2 matches he played, as Manchester United would eventually lose in the round of 16 after they were knocked out of the group stage of Champions League that season. But of course, in the FA Cup, in which he won in the 6 matchups he played, he only allowed 5 goals. And even in the Champions League matchups he played, he allowed 7 goals in the 6 matchups he played. Manchester United just wasn't able to keep up. Following that 2015 season, he would go on to compete with Spain at the Euro Championships. This would be the very first competition that David De Gea would start in, at least as the Spanish national team goalie. In this tournament, they would eventually place second in their group with Croatia after they ended up beating the Czech Republic 1-0, and they beat Turkey 3-0 in the second game, as David De Gea would hold clean sheets in those matchups. Their third matchup would see them losing 2-1 to Croatia. Once they made it to the knockout phase, they would lose 2-0 to Italy, and that would be how they would exit that tournament. Following the 2015-16 season, David De Gea would eventually go on to return for his 6th season with Manchester United. In 2016-2017, in his age 25 season, David De Gea would play in 35 matchups in a season in which Manchester United finished with the 6th best record in the Premier League. They qualified for Europa League the following season. In the Premier League season itself, in 2016-17, he would allow 27 goals in the 35 matches he played. With his 14 clean sheets, this would be the 7th straight domestic league, 6th straight in the Premier League. And then, of course, going off of the last of his La Liga seasons, in which he finished with double-digit clean sheets. So, of course, that would go as something for him there. They would finish in the round of 6. They would finish in the 6th round of the FA Cup. He would only play 1 game in this tournament, as he would go on to concede a goal. They would go on to win the Football League Cup final, as in the 5 matchups he played, he only allowed 5 goals and he held 2 clean sheets. Not to mention that they had the brilliance of Zlatan Ibrahimovic this year. This year, Manchester United also went on to win the FA Community Cup Shield. This would be the 3rd time that David De Gea had won it in his first 6 years there. He has neither won the EFL Cup final or the league or the Community Shield since. In the Community Shield, he would allow only 1 goal in the match that he played to pick up that title. Not to mention that they went on to win the Europa League, as well as they would have to face off against Ajax in the final. This would be the first time that Manchester United had won the Europa League, actually, since it's been named the Europa League. So this would be a very big a big international title. This would be the first international title that David De Gea would actually be able to claim as his own, especially at the cup level. And then following the 2016-17 season, they would go on to compete in the Super Cup, and they eventually went on to lose. However, going into the 2017-18 season, this would be David De Gea's 7th season with Manchester United, and in his age 26 season, where he turned 27, he would go on to play 37 matchups for a Manchester United team that would finish as runners-up in the Premier League table that year. They also finished as runners-up in the FA Cup final, not to mention the Super Cup, because they had to play against the reigning Champions League winners, who in this matchup was Real Madrid that year. In the Premier League, David De Gea conceded 27 goals in the 37 matches he played, as he had 18 clean sheets. This would be the most clean sheets that David De Gea would ever put together in a domestic season. This would probably be this would be the season that many would consider him in his prime, like prime De Gea. And then in Champions League, Manchester United would eventually fall in the round of 16 to Sevilla. In the 6 matchups that De Gea played in against the club from his home country, he would allow 2 goals in those 6 matchups, as he had 4 clean sheets for the entire Champions League going up until then. Not to mention that in 2017-2018, they would finish in the 5th round of the EFL Cup. This would be the season where Romelu Lukaku led the team in scoring, just to give some more sense as to where Manchester United was. They were a very good team, but they were not unable to win a trophy. They actually have not won a trophy as a team since 2017. But in 2018, they had a pretty good run for some. Following 2017-2018, David De Gea would go on to return for his age 27 season, his 8th straight season with the Manchester United club. In that season, he would go on to start all 38 matchups for the very first time in the Premier League. The last time he started all 38 games was his last season in Atletico in 2011. In the 38 matchups he played, he made sure that Manchester United would qualify for Europa League yet again, as they finished with the 6th best record in the Premier League. David De Gea would allow 51 goals in the 38 matchups he played. That would be the most he allowed as a Premier League goalie, as his 7 clean sheets would snap his 8-season streak of at least 10 clean sheets in a domestic season. Not to mention that he would go on to allow 9 goals in the 9 Champions League games that Manchester United would play. They would eventually make it all the way to the quarterfinal before they were knocked out by Barcelona 4-0 on aggregates. I don't even think that Manchester United has even made it that far in Champions League since then. Following that 2018-19 season, that has seen the most recent time that he's been that close to the Champions League. This will lead into his age 28 season in 2019-2020, which would be David De Gea's 9th season with Manchester United. And he would go on to start all 38 games for the 2nd year in a row. And this year, he would make sure that Manchester United finished with the 3rd best record in all of the Premier League. 2019-2020 was also known as the season that was heavily impacted by COVID, in the sense that the end of the season had to get delayed by about 3 months. But regardless, they still finished the season. They had to cancel the Ballon d'Or, but regardless, this didn't apply to David De Gea. That not meant in a disrespectful way. In 2019-20, Manchester United, in addition to finishing 3rd in the the Premier League, they would go on to get knocked out in the semifinals of the FA Cup and in the English Football League Cup. But in the Premier League in that season, David De Gea would allow 32 goals in the 38 matchups he played, as he had 13 clean sheets. This would be the 9th season in 10 years in which he was able to put up double-digit clean sheets, and of course at that level. And when he got knocked out in the semifinal levels of the League Cup, he allowed 3 goals in the 2 matches he played, and then he allowed 3 goals in the 1 FA Cup match he played. In the Europa League, Manchester United would eventually go on to get knocked out in the semifinal round, as they ended up losing to Sevilla the second year in a row, essentially. And David De Gea would allow 2 goals in the 2 matches he played. Following that 2019-2020 season, there wasn't a Euro tournament because it had to get delayed a year. But that would go into David De Gea's most recent full season in 2020-2021, his age 29 season, his 10th full season with the Manchester United Football Club. He would start 26 of the 38 matchups as Manchester United finished as runners-up for the first time since 2018. And, of course, within that season itself, where Manchester United finished as runners-up, De Gea would allow 30 goals in the 26 matches he played, as he had 9 clean sheets on the year. Manchester United would also go on to finish in the round of 6, or in the 6th round of the FA Cup. David De Gea wasn't able to play in that or the League Cup. He did, however, compete in Champions League, as Manchester United would eventually get knocked out at group stage. They would get knocked down to Europa League. In Champions League, David De Gea allowed 7 goals in the 5 matches he played, as he had 1 clean sheet. In the 5 Europa League matchups he played in, David De Gea allowed 6 goals, as he had 2 clean sheets there. Manchester United in the most recent Europa League tournament went all the way to the finals, where they would finish as runners-up to Villarreal on penalties after David De Gea was unable to make the penalty kick himself. But regardless, of course, no one blames David De Gea for losing. After all, it was 11-10 in penalty kicks by that time. But that was Manchester United getting ever closer to yet another trophy, but them falling up just short. Not to mention that they did go on to finish runners-up in the Premier League last season. So, of course, he was a big part of a well-moving engine that Manchester United was last season. Of course, following that season, that leads into the 2021 Euros, in which he competed as the starting goalie for Spain for the second time at the Euros. In this tournament, Spain would eventually make it through on the table after they beat Sweden and Poland on draws. They would beat Slovakia 5-0 in Game 3 in order to earn their spot to the next round. In the knockout phase, Spain would end up beating Croatia 5-3 in extra time. The next game versus Switzerland, they drew 1-1. In the semifinals, they would end up falling just short to Italy, as Italy would end up beating Spain on penalty kicks. But of course, David De Gea was not actually even playing this tournament, as he actually got benched for Unai Simon. But following this 2020 European Championship, which saw Spain fall in the semifinals, David De Gea would, of course, go into this current season for Manchester United, his 11th season with the club, his 13th as a starting goalie for a top-level club at the senior level. Thus far, he started all his games, as Manchester United is yet another team that is fighting for one of the top seeds in the Premier League, and of course the Champions League as in itself. And of course, once this season is completed, hopefully by this time next year, I'll have more to talk about David De Gea over this next year. But until then, I want to thank the Pro Football Reference, the Transfer Mark, the Footy Stats, and of course the various FIFA websites that I used in order to get all the facts and figures that I needed for this episode. Without them, I wouldn't be able to do this. I want to thank everybody for listening to all 23 minutes of this piece. I do hope all is well. And I want to wish David De Gea a happy 31st birthday. He is an incredible goalie, and I think that people really getting into soccer, and I imagine a lot of soccer fans already are aware of him, but I think that David De Gea is definitely a marvel to watch. And even though his team's defenses haven't really been forgiving of him in the past, if you give David De Gea the chance, he will show you why he's been the starting goalie on the world's most valuable franchise for the past decade at least. With that said, thanks for listening to my piece. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another episode once all of today's exhibitions are done tomorrow. Thanks for listening to my piece. I hope all is well, and peace out. I'll catch you tomorrow.